Okay, what are these? If you can just give us an idea about what are these, let's say, principles.
Okay, so the most common and most well-known principles, ethics principles. For example, we have the principle of respect for autonomy, which is basically respect to the person's ability and right to make the decisions about their own body, their own health. And for example, there's a principle of beneficence. It's our duty as healthcare providers, as researchers, to do good. And the non-maleficence, which is basically our duty not to harm or not to cause harm to our patients or to research participants. The issue of justice, where we need to be basically fair with the different aspects of or varieties of theories of justice as well. So these are, for example, they're kind of the guiding principles. I mean, in terms of the ethical considerations in the humanitarian work, there are other set of standards. For example, there's the impartiality, the neutrality, about so this is kind of like a different set of principles. So generally speaking, when we talk about them, then it's hard to argue that people would have a problem with when I say that autonomy. For I should respect your ability to decide about yourself. What happens to you? What happens to your body? Whether it's in peacetime and or in wartime. So in principle, these principles seem to be okay. It seems to be working. It seems to be fine, which is the case. However, uh, when we talk about to what extent these principles are applicable and reflect the global south or the global perspective on that, because when we assume about that universalism, for example, which is basically that there are certain standards that could apply to all humans all the time anyway. So this is the very basic concept of universalism. However, we cannot, and I think it's really important to, as an intellectual exercise, when we discuss these principles, we have to understand that these principles developed in a different context after different set of events. World War II was the starting point where people like what the Nazi soldiers did to the prisoners of war and the concentration camps and the Holocaust and all of that. We don't this to happen. We don't want this to happen again. Okay, what we'll do that these are the principles. So the Nuremberg Code was kind of like the starting point from there. So we are talking about World War II that did not happen in our region. We have some involvement in it, and we were affected by it, obviously. But to what extent that this context represents us, morally speaking, or intellectually speaking, or just from a very epistemological kind of approach? And then the Declaration of Helsinki, the involvement of people from the global south in general was very limited, if at all. The member report is a U.S. Document that resulted from after the Tuskegee study and all the which is basically, for those who are not aware of the study, it's just a study where we're targeted African American for syphilis. They were left uninformed, experimented without their consent, and they were not provided the treatment for their condition, which led to congenital syphilis and their death and the death of their spouse. So, and when this was discovered, that no, this is wrong. We have to set a set of principles, and then these three principles developed, and the four principles by Bush and Bacchardis, again, two American philosophers, and they had been like the gold standard, if you wish, of principles, and the principalism was the guiding theory. It's not basically a theory, but kind of like a mid-level theory, let's say, that is happening until this day, or guiding our discussion until this day. So I believe that we have been under like the impact or the effect of intellectual products, which are not necessarily wrong. I'm not saying that this is, I have a problem with the company, these guidelines or these principles as Western. This is not my issue. But the issue is to what extent that these principles are representative of our moral values. And we'll give a few examples perhaps as we go on in our discussion.